I am so effing sick of these pussy Democrats. I know I'm not supposed to say it. Yeah. It's a bad word, and I know the Democrats are such great guys, and they got a great strategy, and they're waiting to unleash that great strategy. I'm so tired of it. My God, man, this man is in clear violation of federal laws. He's breaking the FISA statute. He's rubbing it in your face, saying, I'm going to continue to break that federal law. And one of them has the courage, to stand up and say, for the love of God, we're not saying impeach him. We're not saying throw him out of office. We're just saying, hey, censure him so that he understands that he is breaking the law. It's the simplest, most obvious, most necessary thing I've ever heard in my life. And what do his fellow Democrats do to back him up? Obviously, we're talking about Senator Feingold and how he wants to censure the president. What do his Democratic colleagues do to back him up? Nothing. Worse than nothing. They come out equivocal, meal-mouthed pieces. Well, I don't know, it's the right thing to do. Of course, Lieberman, the top clown in the Senate, comes out and says, I'd rather take some action and work on policy. Really? What action have you worked on, Lieberman? Other than getting us into that disastrous war in Iraq, what action have you worked on? What policy have you worked on, Lieberman? And then Reid comes out today equivocal. Schumer, I don't know, we'll have to discuss it. So one of the stories that everybody runs over the last couple of days, Feingold by himself. Feingold gets no support. Democrats do not join the censure action. All by himself. And then today, Republicans, I hear them over and over. Even Nancy Pelosi won't back Feingold. Imagine how liberal and left and out of the mainstream he is. My God, man, they're afraid of losing centrist voters? The latest poll, and it changes every day and gets worse every single day. The latest poll has approval ratings for the president among independent centrist voters. Not Democrats. Independent centrist voters. Approval rating of 23%. 23% is before they rally the generals for a coup. That's how low it is. I haven't seen 23% for any foreign dictator. 23%. And they're worried about losing those guys? You've already lost those guys.
No, you have those guys. That's exactly the point. I mean, I think more Democrats ought to come to his side, but if he's at 23%, you don't really have to do anything. You're not going to drive it below 23%. The only thing you might do is rally people to his side. That's the way of thinking, but you haven't lost them. You actually have them.
You see, you haven't lost them because of your policies. You haven't lost them because they like George Bush. They can't stand George Bush. They despise George Bush. 23% is despise numbers. Not kind of, maybe, not a little bit. We hate this guy. Okay? 23% is abysmally low. Now, these centrist voters, you're thinking about alienating them because you're going to say you don't like George Bush and you want to censure George Bush? They're not going to have a problem with that. They're going to love that. They're going to love it. But no, you're too scared to even do that. You know what you really could lose? What you could lose is people like me and the hundreds of people that call into this, thousands of people that call into this show, that respond to the blogs that we put up, that say, enough is enough. I can't vote for these guys. I can't show up to vote if they're not going to fight for me. Why am I going to get motivated to go to an election booth and to vote for these Democrats if they're not going to be any different than the goddamn Republicans?
Well, saying they're not different than the Republicans is just ignorant. I mean, they're dramatically different than the Republicans. The Republicans are accusing Russ Feingold of treason. It is as sharp a difference as I can imagine. But I think that, I actually think the numbers don't make sense when you make that argument. I really think if he's at 23%, the theory is, and it's not all dumb people who think this, is that we can't do any, this is as good, this guy is being pulverized, and the last thing we want to do is have any kind of Clinton-like response to him, which I think, my own opinion is you would get some of that. The flip side is at some point you need to show strength. I don't know, and if you'd showed strength on, 6 of the last 13 issues, then you probably could leave this one alone. The problem is for people like you and the hundreds of others, and by the way, if it's only hundreds, then they can't ignore you. But
No, Ben, I mean hundreds and thousands of people, and not one other person on the other side. But by that, they're a proxy for the millions of voters who are like, will you, for the love of God, or act already. Go and hit the guy. Go and hit the guy. Instead of sitting back and saying, okay, yeah, you're so right, I'm sorry for being unpatriotic and defense. Oh, I'm so scared. I'm so scared of you, Carl. What are you scared of? Will you hit the guy?
Well, I disagree with that assertion of the way it's been. But I hear what you're saying, and there's obvious significant frustration that they haven't been strong really on anything. And I am not of the belief that this is necessarily the right move. What I think is, but the fact that they haven't been strong on anything else leads me to believe that I wish they'd be strong on something. And this is certainly an option to be strong on. The flip side is I don't agree also with your characterization of the headlines. I mean, I assume that a lot of the headlines are that there's a call for censure of the president over the warrantless wiretapping. There's an argument to be made that the best thing to do is to have some people out there supporting the censure without having the entire party drive it, a process which, of course, ultimately they would lose. But I would say what you want to do is keep it in the papers for as long as possible. And I'm not sure that the way.
Do you think this might be a ploy by the Democratic senators to keep it in the papers longer?
No, I don't think. I was about to say I don't think they're going about that the right way. I don't think Russ Feingold surprised anybody with this. I suspect it was discussed and they decided to do it, and their response is that they were not going to support him on it. Some obviously will support him on it, but it's not going to win. That we know. That's inconceivable.
It's entirely irrelevant. A censure vote, by the way, is not something that requires some sort of action. It's just a simple statement of what you're doing is wrong, and Congress doesn't agree with it. Number one, it gets people on the record. So Olympia Snowe and Susan Collins and all these people who claim to be moderate Republicans, it shows them to be the filthy liars that they are, and it gets people on the record. It's not like, oh, we're going to pass the bill, and then so President Bush is going to change his actions. He's not going to change his actions. Even if they voted it 100-0, he wouldn't change his actions. That's not the point. The point is, when our country is in crisis, and now Sandra Day O'Connor, Helen Thomas, Al Gore, all these people have come out and said our country is in crisis. They've never seen it as bad as this, and I couldn't agree with them more. Sandra Day O'Connor, who put Bush into office, a conservative Supreme Court justice, saying we're not at the end of a dictatorship, but we are at the beginning. So warning about the beginning of a dictatorship. A conservative Republican justice appointed by Ronald Reagan and who put George Bush in office in the deciding 5-4 vote. When she says that, and she is that concerned, and so many other people are that concerned, the Democrats can't go on the record and say, yes, what this man is doing is wrong, and it should be censured. Something so simple. That's part of what drives me crazy. It doesn't require much. It just requires to have just a little bit of principle, just a tiny, tiny bit of principle.